cycle. We know last year was a little bit challenging with all the changes with the FAFSA. So hopefully this year we're feeling good and just happy to have all of your help and your participation.
And Sarah Jean, I know you're going to join us in a few slides, but if you want to say hello at this point, I could pass it on to you.
Awesome. Hi, my name is Sarah Jean Zachline. I am the homeless data steward with the California Department of Education.
Thank you so much. Well, let's jump in. And so, welcome again, everyone. We're so pleased to have you all here. This is going to be our 8th year of the Foster Youth FAFSA CADAA Challenge, and the 4th year for our Students Experiencing Homelessness Challenge. So, well underway, very exciting, and glad to have you all be here. This is the first time we've done a combined webinar where we're bringing our foster youth supports and our students experiencing homelessness supporters in the same Zoom. There's a lot of overlap between the two populations. There's also a lot of overlap with the challenge. And so we figured it'd be better just to bring you all together and share what the challenges are all about. So, your typical Zoom housekeeping, we are recording this training and we'll post it online at JBay. So if you want to come back to refer or share it with colleagues, it will be available for you. This is just a regular Zoom meeting because we want the interaction in the chat. So if you're not speaking or you don't have or asking a question, please try to keep your cell phone on mute. I know some of you are on campus and busy, and we don't want to hear the other conversations in your office as interesting as they might be. And then finally, if you want to use the chat at any point during the training to ask us questions, we love those. We want to make sure that you get your questions answered during this session, or raise your hand using the Zoom function, whatever works best for you, whatever feels comfortable. Again, we want to make sure that you get questions answered. And I know that we're a bigger group, so we don't have time to do like one-by-one introductions. But as I pull up the agenda, I would love to just meet you all in the chat. So if you want to put your name, where you're from, whether you're participating in the Foster or Homeless Challenge, and your role with your organization, it would be great to say hello. And as folks are putting their info into the chat, I'll share what we'll be talking about today. So we're going to go over the FAFSA CADAA challenge, kind of what the overview looks like. Up front, we're also going to be providing you a lot of background information that'll be helpful for your work with students. We'll be talking a little bit about the 25-26 FAFSA and some reminders of big changes that actually happened last year with the FAFSA, but that are really critical to the populations that we're working with today. We'll have a panel of some of our experts in the room who have done the challenge, who have expertise to share, who have knowledge about how to support students. And so we want to share that expertise with you. And we'll do, again, plenty of time for Q&A and close it out with resources at the end. Great to see so many folks in the chat. Lots of people from around the state. So glad you all could be here. All right, I'll pass it on to Jillian, who will tell us a little bit more about why this all matters.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan. So, on the next slide, we have been hearing and have been seeing throughout the last few years just so many barriers and challenges that students experiencing homelessness and our foster care students face while pursuing post-secondary education and filling out the FAFSA. There's actually a GAO report in 2016 that outlined all these sorts of barriers and challenges. So, number one, between these two populations, we tend to see a lack of parental or familial support. A lot of times, these students, this is their first time, a first generation of going to college. If they do have family, they are unaware of navigating those processes. Again, we're seeing perhaps a lack of stable living environment. They might not have the resources, again, to fill out the FAFSA at home due to where they are staying, due to their environment. A lot of overlap between the two populations have perhaps experienced trauma, perhaps abuse, neglect. So those are things to consider as well. And just in general, we're seeing an increased skepticism and cynicism about the value of higher education. Right now, especially with the pandemic, so many students decided not to pursue post-secondary education because the cost of tuition, because they can get a job working at perhaps in the food service, making $20 an hour. But what we know and what we've seen is that in order to get a good paying job, in order to truly lift students out of the cycle of poverty, they need to pursue a post-secondary education because those individuals have a higher likelihood of having these good paying jobs, as more jobs require some sort of post-secondary education. In addition, the GAO report also found that homeless and foster students face a lot of challenges with burdensome program rules. They have extensive documentation needed. They aren't as prepared academically, and again, might not have that support from family or other supportive environments to help them pursue post-secondary education and fill out the FAFSA. And filling out the FAFSA is often the first step in, pursuing a post-secondary degree. You need financial aid, you need money to pay for college. And on the next slide here, we see that it truly does make a difference. High school seniors who complete the FAFSA are 63% more likely to enroll in higher education. The higher amount of aid that a student receives, the higher likelihood that they are going to successfully transfer or graduate, which is fantastic. And we are seeing this because, number one, our challenges. That's the whole reason why we are doing this is because we're seeing this direct result. But also, two, across the country, we're seeing more states create universal FAFSA laws. So being able to fill out the FAFSA or fill out the CADAA in order for a student to graduate from high school. California, y'all have been doing this for a few years now, but across the country, that is definitely popping up more and more. We're seeing more high schools and more states requiring a FAFSA completion because we know that there's that direct linkage of filling out the FAFSA and pursuing post-secondary education. On our next slide here, for our unaccompanied homeless youth, you need to provide an unaccompanied homeless youth determination for their FAFSA. And we have data going all the way back to 2013. And this is looking at school district liaisons from all across the country. And you can kind of see the numbers shoot up in 2016, because in 2016, there were changes to the Every Student Succeeds Act that said, McKinney-Vento liaisons, you are required to inform your unaccompanied homeless youth that they are independent students. And as independent students, they don't need to include information about their parents on the FAFSA. Because of that change in policy, boom, an increase to 14% one year, 11% another year. Really exciting to see that increase. And I love showing this slide because it's a direct impact of policy change and the strength and the power of policy. And then we start seeing a decrease. And I think we all know what happened in 2020, the pandemic. So again, the numbers kind of plummeted down because students, one, weren't getting identified. Two, they might not have the resources, again, to fill the FAFSA as students were kind of all over the place. And then three, again, the value of higher education, the skepticism, the tuition cost. Students decided maybe not to pursue post-secondary education during those last few, in early 2020s. But now our most recent data from 2022, we're seeing a little uptick. We're seeing an increase. We're not back up to pre-pandemic numbers yet, but we are remaining hopeful. And with all these changes from FAFSA Simplification Act, which I'll talk about in just a little bit, we're hoping for another large increase like we saw in 2016. So fingers crossed, we're moving in that right direction. We're also seeing and hearing that there are more students being identified as potentially, a result of the pandemic too. So again, we're hoping to continually seeing that increase and that rise. On our next slide, we're taking a deeper look specifically here at California and your unaccompanied homeless youth FAFSA determinations. So this is looking at both school district liaisons, and all these other authorized entities that can provide determinations for unaccompanied homeless youth. So that includes financial aid administrators, that includes shelters, other programs. But I just kind of wanted to show you so you can kind of see that California, there's an increase in numbers. So we're seeing more unaccompanied homeless youth filling out the FAFSA, getting those numbers up compared from the previous year. So we're happy to see that, and we're hoping again. We want that numbers to keep climbing up, to keep rising, and hopefully, with all the work that you're doing with the FAFSA CADAA challenge, you're going to help students along the way. And this is all important because we know that meeting with students and working with them one-on-one is the most effective strategy to help a student actually complete the FAFSA. The FAFSA is complicated, it is complex, and students really kind of need that hand holding to walk them through this process. I am so thankful for JBay's how to fill out the FAFSA webinar that they do every year. We'll talk about it in just a little bit, but it's in November at some point. We'll send you the slides and you'll get a copy. But it is just such a helpful resource and tool to sit and go question by question, because when you're watching someone do it, then you're like, okay, that is how I can frame. This is how I'm supposed to answer these questions when I'm working with a student at your school. And again, it's all recorded. So if you ever have questions, you can always refer and go back to it. So we're just so happy and so thankful for your dedication, your help, for helping our students, both experiencing homelessness and former foster care, complete the FAFSA and pursue their post-secondary education dreams. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our other co-presenter, Sarah Jean, to talk and provide just some context, looking at some data in California. And let me turn it over to you, Sarah Jean.
Yeah, I do see a question in the chat. I don't know if you wanted to address that first.
Okay, let me check. All right. So someone said, I provided my unaccompanied homeless youth McKinney-Vento students a verification letter. I'm at a virtual school, so my signature was an Adobe signature. I had an employee from a community college financial aid office email me telling me she cannot verify the letter I provided the student without having a wet signature. Is this accurate? There is nothing that says that that shouldn't be accepted. Let me do a little bit more digging on that, but I have never, actually, no, I have never, I have provided a determination before and it wasn't a wet signature. So whoever it is, it's just showing up as iPhone. Feel free to email me. Let me put my email here and let's connect offline. But the financial aid office should be accepting that because it does not explicitly state in the law that it needs to be a wet signature. It should be accepted. So email me, whoever the iPhone user is. And thank you for flagging that, Sarah Jean. I'll turn it back over to you.
Excellent. I'm going to introduce myself again. My name is Sarah Jean Zuckline. I'm with the California Department of Education, and I'm here to talk about a little bit of data regarding this population. So I'm really just focusing on the homeless education side of things, but right here, we're just looking at the past 4 years of graduation rate data for homeless students in a 4-year cohort. As you can see, the number has actually risen and then stayed pretty steady. If you did compare this non-homeless counterpart, we are significantly lower in terms of graduation rates. So that is one thing to keep in mind. This is a struggling population, but we do like to see these numbers rising. So it is something more.
I think we might have lost Sarah Jean.
I think so too.
Oh no. Okay. Well, hopefully she's able to come back on. We'll skip through. Can't avoid in this Zoom life any type of like technical challenges. Looks like she'll jump back on in a minute. Thank you all for bearing with us. I know that this definitely happens. I think what I'll do is I'll move us forward, and then once Sarah Jean jumps back on, we can return to her data as I want to make sure
Did,
that you all. Oh,
can you hear me?
oh, yes, you're back. Okay.
Sorry. Did I go out for a minute there?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
you.
weird. Okay. Yeah, for some reason the Zoom just like shut down
Oh
on my end.
no.
It was really strange.
Pass it back to you. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So what you're looking at here are 4 years of homeless student graduation rate. It is less than the non-homeless counterpart, but we do like to see these numbers continue to rise. And we're hopeful that the 23-24 data will continue a trend of rising, or at the very least staying pretty steady. And I did want to mention also students being able to graduate with the statewide minimum standard has really helped this population, homeless and foster, be able to graduate without having to stick with their local graduation requirements. So here we're looking at our dropout rates, which also have been on the decline, which is excellent. We did see a bit of a rise in 2020, 21, but we're seeing those numbers go down, which is exactly what we want to see. We want to see students, persevering in the junior and senior years, even though those tend to be the highest number of unaccompanied youth numbers and the highest number of, instances where they have to take on more responsibilities. Next slide. And here's just some unique challenges that I think we've already talked about a little bit, but just want to touch on again for homeless seniors. Of course, identification is a big one, knowing who is in need for help and support. And with the homeless student population, it's a bottom-up identification strategy. So really getting everybody aware of what to look for. But there are homeless seniors, they tend to transfer more. They tend to maybe lose credits if they go from one school to another or one state to another state. Um, Even outside, moving from district to district, it can put them behind with having less stability and less of a stable support system as well. We tend to see the unaccompanied youth numbers go up significantly in those later years. They tend to struggle with stigma, shame, mental health struggles, and then, of course, just basic need and access to that. So if a student is living in their car or staying on a friend's couch, they might need extra supports at school to help keep them engaged. Next slide. So next month, November 7th, I'm going to be hosting a Data, Donuts, and Discussion. If you've not attended a Data and Donuts, oh my gosh, you're missing out. They're awesome. We've been doing these for about a year and a half, actually almost going on 2 years. And it's so much fun. I highly recommend signing up for this. We're going to talk about homeless seniors. We're going to talk about graduation rates. We're going to talk about the statewide minimum requirements for graduating. And if you're even able to make a little bit of it, please come and join us. We do a raffle at the end to make it fun. And we just try to make it a nice, open, informal learning session so that all questions are welcome. We typically try to have subject matter experts presenting, and we'll have JBay actually presenting as one of our guests for this particular session. And next week, I'm just going to shamelessly plug this. Next week, we're having another Data and Donuts. Next Thursday, we're going to be talking about youth engagement and student engagement in terms of data. So involving students to the table when it comes to making decisions, collecting data, getting data directly from students, hearing from them, really prioritizing youth voice. So if you haven't signed up for those, highly recommend it. Data and Donuts is so much fun. I'll go ahead and put the link in the chat also for the youth-driven data session. And that's it for me. Any questions?
That's great. Thank you so much, Sarah Jean. I can't wait for the data and donuts. Both of these upcoming sessions are going to be really great. So I hope folks attend. And thank you for sharing the data. I mean, many of the folks in this room can contribute to that, those positive, like growing graduation rates and those lower dropout rates. So something again for you all to celebrate as you're doing this work. You're making a difference with young people. So we're gonna get into the challenge now. We're gonna talk about what it means to participate in the FAFSA CADAA challenge. And just a reminder, I am talking about both challenges kind of simultaneously here, both the foster care and the challenge for students experiencing homelessness. For our folks who are kind of coordinating those different challenges, they'll look slightly different just depending on which challenge that you're participating in. So our McKinney-Vento liaisons, our homeless education liaisons are helping to coordinate those the FAFSA challenge at districts, at at individual schools, sometimes at the county. So we have a that group for the students experiencing homelessness, and then we have our County Office of Ed, our FYSCPs, our foster youth programs supporting the foster youth FAFSA challenge. For both challenges, we use web grants, a form of web grants to verify our completion. For both of the challenges, you may not be directly the one helping students individually complete the FAFSA or CADAA. You may be coordinating with other community partners in your area, like other nonprofits. You could be coordinating with the local community college. You could be coordinating with your child welfare agency. So you are the folks who are bringing together all of those resources to help young people complete the FAFSA or CADAA. And we always love hearing from this group because many of you are doing creative, innovative things to try and get those FAFSA CADAA completion rates up. So we love to hear about strategies that you all are using, and I know we'll hear about some later in this presentation, just to help again boost those numbers for our most vulnerable young people who have a lot of barriers that we discussed earlier. And a reminder that all of the work that you are doing with this challenge, it works. So this data is for the foster youth challenge because we've had enough years to show the trend. And we're hoping that with the challenge for students experiencing homelessness, we'll see this data as well in a few years as we're getting up there. But, since the challenge started, the foster youth challenge started back in academic year 17, 18, we've seen kind of a steady increase in the FAFSA CADAA completion rates for foster youth. And that really goes hand in hand with the support that you all are giving during this challenge. There's a couple dips, not surprising, things we've already touched on. The first year of the pandemic, you can see there in 2021, it dipped down. And then last year, with just the incredible challenge and frustration we all had with the FAFSA rollout, it dipped again. So we're hoping that this year, even though the FAFSA is not going to be released on October 1st as we expected, we're hoping it will be a smoother rollout and we can keep that upward trajectory going because the support really does make a difference. And you can see the overall completion rates for both challenges this past year that just finished. 60% overall completion rate across the state, 60% for foster youth, and 52% for students experiencing homelessness. So again, a little bit of a dip from the previous year, but I think we have a good head start for December 1st with the FAFSA, and hopefully we can keep the numbers going up from here. So the challenge starts December 1st to coincide with the opening of the FAFSA and the CADAA, and it will run through May 16th, 2025. There's only going to be one report due for this challenge at the end of the challenge in June. So the report will be due in June, and you'll get information on how to submit that report in May. Those dates again coincide with the delayed release of the FAFSA CADAA. All right. So the first thing that we all are thinking about as we start the challenge is calculating our baseline number of students who are participating. So again, we're starting on December 1st, 2024 to coincide with the release of the FAFSA CADAA. And we're including all of our students experiencing homelessness. So I know we've talked a little bit about unaccompanied homeless youth in this presentation, but when you're doing your baseline, you're going to include all students experiencing homelessness, even if they're experiencing homelessness, for example, with their families. And again, all students who are in foster care as well, if you're doing the foster care challenge. A reminder that this baseline number includes students who are on kind of alternative degree tracks or non-diploma tracks. It became too complicated to try to pull those students out from the overall list. So it's just easier if we include them, even if even if they may not be, even if you know that they're not going to complete the FAFSA, we still put them on the list, and we still encourage you to reach out to those students as they may have their own plans for their future. And for the baseline as well, they should be included in your baseline if they were in your county for the Foster Youth Challenge or your district or school for the Homeless Challenge for 30 or more cumulative days. So we recognize that with our homeless population, with our foster youth population, there is a lot of mobility. Young people are moving around a lot. They may be switching schools. They may be even leaving your county. So we just want to recognize that a little bit of stability will help for the baseline and for you to do the work to complete your FAFSA and CADAA. We'll go more into the verification in a few slides, but once you have your baseline number and you're tracking those young people, those students who have been in your jurisdiction for at least 30 days, we also want to verify your FAFSA CADAA completion, and you can do this a couple ways. We ask that you verify through web grants, and there's a couple options, and I'll talk through those in a few slides. And then I already mentioned that we're just doing one final report this year in June, and that report will cover the baseline number of students and the number of students you supported in completing the FAFSA CADAA between December 1st and May 16th. So more on calculating the baseline, and I'll just put out there, sometimes this can be a really tricky process. It is complicated because of those mobility issues that we have with this population, or you're not sure if a particular student should be counted. Definitely feel free to reach out to myself or Jillian if you're having some questions about the baseline. We can always provide, we can always answer your questions about a particular student circumstance. But we have a couple options for you to be able to pull this baseline data. So for our students experiencing homelessness, there's various CalPADS reports that you could use to calculate or to find out how many students are experiencing homelessness in your district or your school. Both of these reports, the CalPADS 1.18 and 8.1 and 5.4, they are point in time or end of year reports, and so they may not capture your homeless students like today. So it's always good to use these reports and then use your own internal student information system just to verify that you've captured all of the students that you need to, or you've removed any students who were not in your district for at least 30 days. For our Foster Youth Challenge, the CalPADS 5.7 report or the Foster Focus checklist report can help you pull that list as well of your foster youth students. Again, you can also, for our Foster Youth Challenge, also use your own student information system as well if you're tracking students with foster care experience kind of in that way as well. So you're compiling this baseline list as a cumulative list of your high school seniors in foster care or experiencing homelessness. So as we've mentioned a few times, it's very important to kind of rerun this report, look at the data often because of those changes in student enrollment. So your students may be leaving, you might have students coming in, and we want to make sure that you have an accurate list of all of your students so you can support them, and that you also get credit for all the students that you've helped complete the FAFSA CADAA. So we'll talk about what other folks have done, but we recommend that you're checking at least on a monthly basis to verify those entries and exits. On our FAFSA challenge web pages for the both challenges, we have an internal tracking sheet that is really helpful to you all for calculating this baseline. You can put your student information in, when they're coming into your district or county, when they may have left, and it automatically calculates that 30 days so you can see who is counting and who is not. And it will also, allow you to say if they've completed the FAFSA or CADAA. So when you get to doing that final report, you can have an accurate picture of the students in your baseline and the students that you help support with the FAFSA CADAA. Thanks, Jillian, for dropping that in the chat. So we talked about this, and again, I'll go into it in a little bit more detail, but we do require that you verify the FAFSA CADAA completion through web grants. To have access to web grants, if you're at a district or a high school, you may work with your county office of ed. You may work with someone in your district who has web grants access. It might just depend on what that looks like. And the method that you'll use, and I'll talk through the methods in the next section, will really depend on how many students are in your baseline count. If you have a small number of students, there might be a better way of doing it. If you have a large number of students, we highly recommend the WIN-SCP process, which I'll talk about in a minute. But first, just want to pause and see if folks have any questions on this baseline data, calculating the baseline. Yeah, Carlos, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I was trying to run a report through using Faster Focus, and there's two options for financial aid checklist. Is that the one that you guys were referring when running a report?
Yes.
Financial aid checklist report?
Financial aid checklist report.
And it has two options, either a school year or point in time. Which one would you guys recommend?
I'm actually not super familiar with the report. Is maybe someone on the call can help answer what they've used, if they've used Foster Focus financial aid checklist report. I suspect both will be helpful for you. I mean, the point in time, I think you would want to just make sure that you are double checking that with your own student information system, just to make sure that you're capturing students who came in to your county, to your district, after that report was after the point in time of that report, or exited while that report was run. So I think you could use either one, but just want to verify with your student information system that your numbers are accurate.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And folks can feel free to put some suggestions in the chat if you also have like suggestions for reports that you've used.
I had a question about the requirement for web grants.
Yeah.
So I don't have access to web grants. What I did previous years is use our WIN-SCP, the secure file transfer. Do we have the option?
Okay. Yes. So WIN-SCP is a form of web grants. It's just in like a different way. So absolutely. The two options are using the web grants for institutions or the WIN-SCP file transfer. Thanks, Ian. All right, so we'll talk about both options now. So for our web grants for institutions, this does require a login credential and some work that you might have to do within your county or district to gain access to web grants. The With web grants for institutions, you are looking up each student individually to check their FAFSA completion. So it might be a little onerous for folks who have many foster youth or homeless youth students in their district or county. But if you have a manageable number, this is certainly a valid way of verifying that FAFSA CADAA completion. Our second option is the one that Amy just mentioned, which is the WIN SCP file transfer. So this doesn't require those same kind of access requests. It does involve CSAC or getting on the phone with CSAC, and we'll make that connection to download the WIN SCP kind of file transfer platform onto your computer. But it's fairly simple. And then once you have that on your desktop, you submit a list of your foster youth students or your homeless students. You upload that to the WinSCP portal, and it emails you back a list of your foster or homeless students and their FAFSA CADAA completion status. It also will tell you a lot of other data, like if their GPA match has occurred, if they've completed the CHAFE for foster youth. So it can also provide you additional information about what's going on with the student. So if you are interested in this WinSCP process and you don't currently have access to it, definitely get in touch with me, and I'll put my email in the chat, and we can get you set up to have that. We'll get you connected with CSAC so they can get you that platform on your computer. This just kind of goes through again what that process looks like for WinSCP. So you log in, you drag and drop your file that you've included student name, date of birth, and their SSID on the spreadsheet. You upload it. It starts the process. It emails you back when you're done. On our Foster Youth Challenge websites, both the homeless and the Foster Youth Challenge, we do have very specific instructions for doing this upload to WinSCP. We also have the template spreadsheet so that when you're ready to upload the data, you just fill in your student information and upload it to the WinSCP. Thanks, Helena. Yeah, I think there are some very specific formatting requirements for the spreadsheet, and we do go through that on the instructions and in the policies and procedures. So definitely take a look at that. It does take a little bit of time to format the data, and making sure it's in the spreadsheet in the right way, but it does save quite a bit of time if you're able to get it to format correctly. And if you ever have challenges with the data, if it's routinely giving you errors or you're not able to format, just let us know and we can help kind of problem solve with CSAC. Sometimes it has been errors on kind of in the database themselves. So let us know and we can definitely help you through those process. Well, great, thank you. Yeah, we definitely want to help others have access to WinSCP. So again, if you would like access to try this out this year, now's the time. Now's the time to get it all set up before the challenge starts. So definitely be in touch with me and we can get you connected to CSAC. All right, I know there might still be questions about this and folks can feel free to continue to drop them in the chat, but I want to pass it over to Jillian because we have some folks to share about their challenge experiences.
Great. Thank you, Megan. So before we get into the panel, we just want to kind of show you the winners of last year's challenge. So on our first slide coming up, we're looking at our 23-24 FAFSA CADAA challenge for students experiencing homelessness winners. And we have four different categories in terms of size, because we know, in California, y'all have a lot of different school districts, a lot of different sizes, a lot of different people. And so you can see we have from left to right, large, medium, small, and very small. And our winners were San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools, San Marcos Unified School District, San Diego County of Education, Juvenile Court, and Community Schools, and then lastly, Wheatland Union High School. So congratulations to our 23-24 winners. These institutions, these schools received a small grant money with unrestricted funds from JBay. And so we have some folks from our winners that are going to be talking in just a little bit to share what they've done to have such a successful challenge for their students. Before I get into that, let's take a look at our foster youth winners. So similar, we have our different large, medium, school, small, very small. We've got Fresno, Tulare, San Mateo, and Yuba County. So again, congratulations to our foster youth winners. Really high numbers for our foster youth. I know it was a really, really challenging year for the FAFSA, like very challenging. So we commend all your efforts and all the work that you've done. And just so grateful that we have some folks joining us today to just share their knowledge and their expertise. So with that, I'm going to invite our three panelists to go ahead and get their cameras on, come off mute. We have from San Mateo County, I think we have Lauren here. And from our San Bernardino, we have Daisy. And from San Marcos, I'm not sure if I saw Rosa, but I think Rosa is also here as well. Yep, there you are, Rosa. Perfect. All right. So we got our three panelists that are just going to be kind of sharing, what they've learned, what they've done, and just provide some of their knowledge and their expertise. So let me start with Lauren first. If you don't mind sharing, what were the greatest lessons learned that helped you increase your completion rate? And then I'll go to Daisy and Rosa.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jillian, and thank you, Megan, and thank you, everyone. I'm really grateful to be here. I have two lessons learned quickly. My name is Lauren Sneed. I am the school counselor with San Mateo County Office of Education, Court and Community. I have a dual role that I'm also the foster youth liaison team member that handles only the senior class. So I specialize only in post-secondary. So the first lesson learned was that when I came on board in this position, which is a cross-agency MOU, so I work across probation, I work across human services welfare, and I'm housed at San Mateo County Office of Education, and my office sits in probation's house. So that first lesson learned for us was when I came on, it was very much a traditional education focus, which was individualism, and every single scope of practice was within silos. And because my position was cross-agency, so I was in all three houses with the different languages and communications, we were able to pull together more of a collectivism. And now we call ourselves the village after the African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. And the village has all representations, including the provider. So that lesson learned was that we all need to be on the same page. So it's also not confusing for the foster youth. We are a small county, but I do think it's something that could be scaled. It's just a matter of shifting from individualism to collectivism, and that no one is in charge. We all just kind of stay in our lanes and we focus what is student-centered. And the second was that my supervisor, Mary McGrath, who's an executive director, came to me and said, we're going to work with all county agencies to have this position created where you'll be splitting, but you're there to kind of just focus in on the students, and that I'm housed in probation. So I'm a part of probation. So I have access in all three agencies. So that was our lesson learned, not to work individually on it, but to work all together as the village.
I love that. That cross collaboration is so important, so crucial, and it obviously, seems to be working. Great. Let's turn it over to you, Daisy, if you don't mind sharing just some of the lessons you've learned in San Bernardino.
Hi there, I'm Daisy. I have my camera off because I'm currently at a youth conference in Hesperia in a hotel. And when I turn on my camera, if for some reason it just pulls more network. So I'm so sorry that I cannot turn on my computer, but I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting us to be a part of this. So as a county, it is important for us to support our McKinney-Vento and our foster youth liaisons. So I do want to start by highlighting them. The credit goes out to our liaisons in our county, who are the ones at the district level, doing the direct services. And this includes supporting our homeless and foster youth with completing the FAFSA. As a county, we do support them as needed with their financial aid workshops, which I think they have taken advantage. As we all know, like when helping our kiddos complete the FAFSA, you need more than one person. You need multiple hands to provide that one-on-one. And I actually have here with me Stacy Dimer, who is from the Foster Youth Services Coordinating Program, because as you mentioned, our populations do overlap. So we work together as a county level to support our districts. So Stacy's gonna go ahead and share a little bit of what we've learned. Go ahead, Stacy.
Well, yeah, with the question answered, with the lessons learned, we learned at first we took this with like, okay, we're going to come with a small team so we don't bombard the kids. Well, that doesn't always work. I mean, really, it's all hands on deck. So definitely grow your team so that, because the chances are we're going to have about, 15 maybe in a room, and all 15 of them are going to have a question at the same time. So basically that approach of having one-on-one, you're able to provide more of that one-on-one service if you have a large team. So that means taking, youth led. If you have youth that have already done the FAFSA, bring them on board too. Also utilizing the community colleges if they come along as well, your foster youth liaisons. The biggest partner in this too for us is also the career counselor. So we meet the kids where they're at. So this isn't something that's an addition to their school day. The school counselors help us make it part of their school day. Another thing we learned was snacks. Got to come with snacks because, none of us like to be hangry, and we don't want our kids to be hangry trying to do the application. And one more quick thing is that even though we know that this application can be quick, because it can be a lot quicker for us because, with not having to provide the parental income, doesn't mean we rush it. So just because we know it's quick, don't rush this with the students, because we all know that it's just one click that will turn you into a spiral of a password not remembered, or, we've all been there with something. So yeah, just basically just learning to take our time with this. And then one more too is also giving that heads up of a document tool, so the kids are aware of what's needed before the day. For speaking on the foster youth side, CFS is on speed dial on my phone. So we always have that youth that doesn't have their social security number, and then let the kids do this. Isn't a one and done. We have a follow up as well for the kids that aren't able to finish it that day.
That is awesome. Thank you, Stacy, for sharing. And I totally agree. It's so much. Let's get the FAFSA done correctly the first time right away, because it is so much more difficult and harder to try to get corrections when it's already been processed. And yeah, so I agree with you on that. All right, Rosa, let's turn it to you to talk about what you've learned doing the challenge in San Marcos.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Rosa Felix. I'm a school counselor, and last year I had the opportunity to be the designated McKinney-Vento school counselor. Similar to my counterparts, it does take a village. So I had the opportunity to work at all the high schools and communicate with all the staff that directly works with the students, school counselors, CTE people, migrant ed program. So we were able to collaborate and work together in order for us to help and assist all the students. So communication is a key, being open and being understanding, and having that candid conversation with everyone when it comes to assisting especially our MV population. Having open communication with the families, that was one of the things that we learned. having accessibility for them to be able to reach at least someone, in this case, myself, and answer those questions and doubts that they had as well.
Awesome, Rosa. And again, I really think our unofficial slogan is it takes a village. You know, it's not just one person doing all this. It's a lot of people. We're doing that triage work. And some folks kind of already answered this second question. So I'm going to open it up for anyone to answer. But, you know, who within your organization or your community provides that one-on-one assistance to students? Is there any sort of specific training or support or collaboration that you provide? We know it takes a village, but is there anyone else that we're missing that we haven't talked about that is so crucial in helping with the challenge? So I'll open up to anyone if they want to come on off mute.
I'll go if that's okay. For myself, what I saw is going beyond and tapping into, let's say, special education programs. So if the special education case manager had a special contact or communication with the student, the school psychs, you know, being able to provide them as well with information so that way all the students were included, not just specific, you know, four-year college-bound students, but opening it up to the opportunity to community college and different programs that, you know, we have in the area. So we went ahead and worked with our, what's the title? Workability person for students who had an IEP and being able to see what kind of different programs they were able to apply for and also have them apply to the FAFSA. That was a key point for us as well.
So I think for San Mateo County, the village actually meets in the summertime in July, and we do what's called a Transitional Age Youth Summit. So we take our AB 12 youth because we're student focused, and we allow them to talk to us about what is going to help students complete their financial aid. We bring in AB 12 youth that are already at college, and they're there placed as AB 12s, 18 to 21-year-olds, and they hold a whole workshop for a full day with the village. So the village right now is about 80 to 90 people from different providers. And from there, just for not to have duplications, everyone to stay in their lane and not overwhelm, we come together with a school calendar for each month. So that way the youth isn't hearing housing from one person and this from another person. So the social workers, probation officers, providers, anyone that has a contract to serve the youth have to come out for the day with their calendars ready so we can understand each month what the theme is going to be and how we're going to support the youth in the village. And then we divide it up by where the youth sits. So we have contracts with Pivotal, so it's a team effort. So Pivotal has an RFA with our Human Services Agency, and the ILP Village runs through the Human Services Agency, and they meet one-on-one with the youth, so we know who the point person is. The village meets each month, so that way we review the status of each youth. Then we also have ILP, which is the Human Services Agency's team, and they look at our out-of-county youth. The other county youth are housed within a separate contract for another RFA, and then I do the dual status youth. So similar to my counterpart, Rosa, we work with the schools, so we bring in the counselors and everyone, but we also don't want duplication. So that way we're really clear on who has the expertise, who's the career counselor, who you should talk to, so the youth isn't hearing two different things. And because the FAFSA was delayed, it really helped us to stay on top of things because we were able to build the relationship with the youth based on who they had a relationship with. So if their CASA was the person, then the CASA would be coming to the village meetings and would be getting the information from the career counselor or the college counselor. But that's who the youth identified as the person they wanted to work with. So that was how we kind of triaged, not thinking we know what's best, but really sitting in July and letting the AB 12 youth that were in our colleges and home for the summer talk with us about the help they needed.
For San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools, our liaisons are majority of the ones that have the one-on-one contact with our youth. So we stay up to date with all the FAFSA guidelines. So we're right there ready to answer those questions. However, we got to back this up. So we back it up with JBay and with Schoolhouse Connect. So we make sure all the slides that we're learning from and all of our webinars, we're providing that to our districts and our charter schools as well. So they have that that knowledge readily available for them also.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. And shameless little plug here. We at Schools Connection just did a webinar yesterday going through preparing unaccompanied homeless youth for the 25-26 FAFSA. I will send the recording, or when we send out this PowerPoint and the slides, I'll also include that recording in the PowerPoint as well if you want to send it out to your schools, because it there's a lot of things going on, team. You all know. In the interest of time, I'm just going to ask the one last question, and that's question number 5. I think folks would want to know, what version of web grants do you use to verify FAFSA CADAA completion? And how often do you verify it? That, I feel like that's a question we tend to get over and over again. So again, want to open it up to anyone who wants to go first.
I participated in the FAFSA challenge since I came over in this position. I started off with web grants for institutions. I've also used the WIN SCP. And then what I found what worked best for me is I worked with the county level. Since I'm with San Mateo County Office of Ed, we have an IT team, and they created a customized query for me that I can then back into the WIN CP. I think someone put it in the chat that sometimes it's very data specific. Even a comma can knock off your whole situation. So it's great that to use it, but I also have the internals like everyone does with the Excel spreadsheets. And just that as we come together on our monthly meetings that are calendared in July, that if we're missing something in a gap, then someone in the village says, okay, Lauren, can you handle that as a school personnel to talk school to the colleague to make sure we get that in. So those are the ways that we go about doing it. And it's not perfect, but we're working on it.
I'll go ahead and share as well. We also at the county level do utilize web grants. So for those LEAs, liaisons that don't have access to it, they do reach out to us, who then are able to run the report for them, and then we share it back to them. So we also use web grants as well.
Awesome. Rosa?
Yeah, same thing with us. So we have a point person that does the report for us through web grants, and they disseminate what we call the share report, where internally everyone is able to look at it as they update it. And because of last year was kind of crazy, they were updating it twice a week. So we were able to see who did submissions and who also completed. For the ones that didn't have the completion, we were able to check back in, and it was all hands on deck to be able to check in with all the students.
Yeah, last year it was wild. We are hoping, even though it is being delayed to December, hopefully it is going to be fully functioning and we're not going to have as many issues as we did last year. Awesome. Thank you so much to our panel. We are so grateful for your expertise, your knowledge. We'll probably have time for questions at the end. So if people have specific questions, thank you, Lauren, for sharing your email. Perfect. I'm going to send it back over to Megan to talk us through kind of, preparing for the 25-26 FAFSA.
Yeah, thank you again for our panelists as well. It's always so enlightening to hear from folks who are doing the work in the field. So thank you for taking the time to share. And I loved all of the hearts and the nods around the collaboration piece, because it really just makes a difference, and that's why we're here. So yes, I know I know that last year was a little traumatic for around the FAFSA CADAA, but we're gonna go into this next year feeling positive and hopeful about what's to come, even if it is delayed. So this next cycle, as I'm sure you all know by now and are planning for, it's not going to be released until December 1st, although we're hoping that when it is released, there will be no or very, very few technical issues to have to navigate like we did last year. So we'll put those good vibes into the universe that will be the case. But there's still things that you all can do to get ready for December 1st. And many of you might already be starting on these on these things. So to prepare your students, you could get them FSA IDs. I know where I am in Los Angeles, the folks are starting to think about doing FSA ID workshops or clinics to get students and parents to create that FSA ID so that they're ready to go in December so they can log in easily and get going on the application. We can already start to identify those students who are experiencing homelessness and provide those determinations, which Jillian will talk a little bit more about. The Chafee grant application is going to open this year on October 14th. For our foster youth students, that is something that they can do in advance of completing the FAFSA. It's a very simple form, but it gets them thinking about financial aid, gets them filling out applications. So it's a great thing to start. Check off the to-do list. And then, of course, for all of you, as we've been talking about, now is the time to get ready with web grants. So figuring out how you need to get access to those web grant reports, if it's someone in your district, in your school, if you want to use the WIN SCP program, now's the time to get in touch with me so we can get it on your computer so you'll be all set for when the challenge and the FAFSA CADAA open. And I'm going to pass it back to Jillian, who will remind us of some of the key things about the FAFSA that we can consider for our populations.
Great. So when we're talking about our students experiencing homelessness for the FAFSA, we're talking really specifically about our unaccompanied homeless youth. So these are students who are experiencing homelessness, but they aren't in the physical custody of a legal guardian or a parent. So these unaccompanied homeless youth and our former foster youth, they are considered to be independent students, don't need to include parental information, but what they do need is to provide some sort of determination, some sort of documentation that says that they meet this definition of, again, unaccompanied homeless youth or a former foster youth. Once a student has been identified and has been determined, they do not need to be going through that process again. They will be presumed to be an independent student for every year that they're filling out the FAFSA. So this is really helpful for you in the high school level because your determination for them, for a foster care student, for an unaccompanied homeless youth, it will follow them with them throughout all their years of college, which is really great because in the past, students would have to do this determination, do this verification every single year. And it was really taxing and re-traumatizing for a student to have to share their story, to run around, get this documentation, and it prolonged the whole FAFSA process. But due to changes from FAFSA simplification, once a student has been identified, they are good to go. And we get this question a lot. So say you have a student who graduates from high school, they're an unaccompanied homeless youth, but then they decide to take a gap year. The next year they reach out to you, they're filling out the FAFSA, they come back to you for a determination. You can still provide them a determination and say, in the 24-25 school year, I identified blank student as an unaccompanied homeless youth. You can provide that determination to the student. The student can provide it to the school. The school might accept it. I'm going to say might because of that date piece, because, in the FAFSA, it shows a particular question on or after July 1st of the previous year. So the school might accept it, but if it doesn't, then it would fall on the financial aid administrator to make a determination. And I'll get a little bit into that in just a little bit, but I want to acknowledge that if a student reaches back out to you, if you feel comfortable, if you feel confident, if you know the student was an unaccompanied homeless youth during your time, you're 100% welcome to provide that determination. The school might not accept it right away, but we're trying to do some more educating around financial aid administrators about these policies. The second piece.
I'm sorry, it looks like there's a relevant question for you too in
okay.
the chat, Jillian.
Let me see. A barrier we face is that the community college, our students are accepting our determinations because they're technically no longer K-12, so the determination is no longer valid. And it looks like the community college doesn't use McKinney-Vento. Well, that is not true because that shouldn't be happening. The Higher Education Act uses the McKinney-Vento definition of homelessness. So if this community college is not accepting, is not one using the definition. We need to communicate with them because that is against the law. And then two, they should be accepting your if the student is returning in K-12, that shouldn't be an issue because of this new change. So in the past, that was always an issue that we were seeing because the student needed to provide a determination every single year. And so they would keep using their old determination from their high school. But now, hopefully, that's not an issue if a student is continuing with their school year every single year. We get into more gray area if a student graduates from high school, takes a few years, and then comes back. Then that's when we get a little bit more gray area about why this financial aid administrator might not be accepting it. But Jessica, email me again. I'll put it in the email, my contact information, because the community college 100% needs to be using the McKinney definition of homelessness. That's part of the law for the federal definition. Okay. All right. Yeah, we have been hearing that a lot of students have been dropping out because they have not been able to access their financial aid. Yeah, it's been a tough time. The second key piece that I want to talk about is, more people can provide determinations for our unaccompanied homeless youth, and the financial aid administrators must be accepting these documentation. So McKinney-Vento liaisons, you have always been an authorized entity. Financial aid administrators should have always been accepting your determination. We know that that wasn't necessarily always the case. More people have expanded, so all shelters, all programs serving individuals experiencing homelessness, not specifically HUD or RHYA shelters or fund shelters. But a key new piece under FAFSA simplification are that McKinney-Vento liaisons can now designate other people to provide unaccompanied homeless youth determinations, which we saw some pushback already because some financial aid administrators aren't aware of this new change in the law. But say if you're in a big school district, you might be one McKinney-Vento liaison and you're working, with many schools, many students. You can designate maybe a school counselor, maybe a social worker, maybe a case manager, maybe someone else at the school who's doing that more one-on-one working with a student experiencing homelessness. You can designate that person as the McKinney-Vento liaison to provide that determination as a designee. And on the next slide here, we have our own sample form that you can use as a determination. And because of this change in law, we put this new section, you can see here where it says role, school district homeless liaison, or designee of a liaison. If you're the designee, check mark that box and then write the name of your school district liaison so there isn't any sort of confusion from the financial aid administrator. We had one student last year who their counselor filled out this form, but didn't notify or didn't say that they weren't the McKinney-Vento liaison. So then the financial aid administrator wasn't accepting the documentation, but this happened during the summer. And so when the student reached out to us, we were trying to reach out to the designee, to the McKinney-Vento liaison, but it was during the summer and they weren't working. So the student had to go weeks and like a month without getting any sort of like recourse happening. So we altered this form. Know that you can use it if you were the designee, and also if you are the school district liaison. We just wanted to make it easier for you and just use that same form. Next slide popping up, because we know that homelessness can look like many things, and sometimes students aren't identified as homeless until they're completing the FAFSA and they get to the point where they're like, oh yeah, I can't include parent information because I'm not living with my parents. I don't know where my parents are. We want to make sure that when those situations happen, if you are a counselor, if you are a case manager, social worker working with a student, and you learn that a student is actually McKinney-Vento eligible, that you are then, referring that student to the McKinney-Vento liaison if that student wasn't identified, so that they are aware of their rights, so that they're added to their student information system. Maybe you have really strong referral systems. It sounds like, in like with Lauren and Daisy and Rosa's, they have a village, they have a group of people that are communicating with one another. But if your system, your school isn't like that, maybe you need to create a referral system like this Google Doc here or Google form that we have that we use. We encourage schools to replicate so that they can share this information back and forth, and they know that this is just a form that they use to communicate if they come across a student who meets this definition but didn't get identified come their senior year, which happens more frequently than you realize. Our next slide is just another key reminders. If for some reason, let's go back to that scenario that I was talking about. The student takes a gap year and reaches back out to you and say, this student, it had been years. It's been like 4 years since you have identified the student as an unaccompanied homeless youth. Maybe you don't really feel comfortable providing a determination, or say that you do. And then the student gives it to the financial aid administrator, and the financial aid administrator doesn't accept it. So then the student reaches out to you and says, they won't accept it. Can you write me a new one? Or what do I do? This is what you fall back on. This is in the law. Financial aid administrators must make unaccompanied homeless youth determinations for youth who cannot provide one. So at the end of the day, if you don't feel comfortable, or if the school isn't accepting your letter because it's been years apart, know that it is on the responsibility of the financial aid administrator to make a determination. It is required by them, it is in the law. And so we want to educate and inform students so that they are aware, so that they know that they can ask for this, because it's confusing and students sometimes get routed the wrong way. And it's hard work having to advocate and push, because this might be the one thing that a student decides, yeah, I don't want to do this. Like, this isn't worth it. Filling out this form is terrible. And now I have to go and get this documentation and I keep getting bounced around. So we want to try to educate and inform students so they know exactly what to ask for, and they feel like they have the agency and the power to advocate for themselves. So it's not only just on you on the K-12 side, there is responsibility on the higher education post-secondary side with the financial aid administrator. And next, I'm going to show you what these questions look like for the 25-26 FAFSA. This is right hot off the press. We just got this from the FAFSA demo site. So this is what the question will be like for our students experiencing homelessness. And you actually see another question first about foster care that Megan will talk about, but we're talking about homelessness right now first. So this question: at any time on or after July 1st, 2024, was a student unaccompanied, so again, not with their parent or guardian, and either homeless or self-supporting and at risk of being homeless? It's a very easy yes or no question. And let's say you answer yes to that. This screen will then pop up the secondary question, which will say, did any of the following determine the student was homeless or at risk of being homeless? And this is really important because, these are the authorized entities that I just talked about. For everyone here on this call, you would check box number 2, because you're either the student's high school or school district home liaison or the designee. So that's just the one homeless question. Well, technically 2. I'll turn it over to Megan to talk about our foster care questions.
Thank you. And yes, so very important as we've talked about, and why it's so important to kind of walk students through those questions is because we want to make sure they answer them correctly, both for our homeless students and for our foster students. So this is the question. It looks familiar, that you might see for determining if a student in foster care is an independent student. There's a couple of questions that look really similar. So at any time since the student turned 13, they were a ward of the court or they were in foster care. For that question, there really isn't a difference between the two. So you can select one or select both if they were in foster care after the age of 13. And then that last question down there, the student is or was in a legal guardianship with someone other than their parent or step-parent, as determined by a court in their state of residence. So if they're in a legal guardianship with a relative or kin gap, if they're in a legal guardianship with another adult, that would count.
Perfect. Thank you, Megan. And that's really important to know. That previous screen is a check all that apply sort of situation. We know some students have multiple layers of
Mhm.
identity. And in the past, there was skip logic that if you answered yes to the foster care question, you never saw the homelessness question. But now, since then, that skip logic has been removed. So students can click both foster care and homelessness because we know that there's a lot of overlap between those two populations. But regardless, if you check any of those boxes, the ones that Megan just showed, or the homelessness question, when you click next, you would get to this screen, which is the screen that we want to get to that says, based on your answers, you're an independent student. This means you don't need to answer financial questions about your parents to complete your FAFSA. And then you carry on through. So, again, students experiencing homelessness who are unaccompanied, and our former foster care students are independent, do not need to include parent information. And this is a really short snippet of these questions, but we want to make sure that you are aware that there's going to be a webinar in November that will really walk through question by question. So keep an eye out for that. I will turn it over back to you, Megan, to close us out for after the FAFSA CADAA.
Yeah, so I know we've been focusing on the FAFSA CADAA, and that's what this challenge is all about, but there's some other important to-dos for students after they've completed the FAFSA CADAA. So we've talked about the Chafee grant application, which will open on October 14th. So for our students who are in a foster care placement between the ages of 16 and 18, they're eligible for an additional $5,000 in grant aid. So we want to make sure that they can get that. Completing the Chafee application is super, super easy. It's just a handful of questions. It's an easy thing to do while you've already got your student there completing the FAFSA. After you complete the FAFSA and CADAA, you can create a Web Grants for Students account that will help you and the student track the state aid that they received and if there are any issues with the state aid. So most commonly we see like some issue with the GPA being received by CSAC. And so you can always use Web Grants to, you or the student can use Web Grants to see what the status of their state aid is. And then we have something new for this year, which is the CalKids account. And so I'm so curious if anyone on this call has heard of CalKids yet. You may have. Yay. See some hands, see some shaking nose. It's a relatively new program in California. Or actually, it's been around for a few years, but there's been some recent changes to it. So there are CalKids is a college savings account that is provided by the state of California. So it jumpstarts that college saving process for children in California with the idea and the research that says just having a college savings account increases the likelihood that you're going to go to college. So we want all of our young people to be able to do that, and having that savings start early helps. So there are two types of CalKids accounts. There's a newborn account. So all children born after July 1st, 2022 have a CalKids account. The amount that's the initial deposit that's in that account will vary just depending on your age and when the child was born. But more importantly, there's a school-aged account, which will really be most relevant to your students. So eligible school-age children may have received a $500 initial deposit. And then if they are foster or experiencing homelessness, they may have an additional $500 deposit. It's possible in those rare situations where you have a young person who's both a foster and homeless student and low income that they have $1,500 in their account. So how much they have depends on kind of when what grade they were in and which academic year. This is a little confusing, but this is the information that CalKids provides. And we really want to focus on that 21 to 22 school year, because if your student was in grades 1 through 12 during 21, 22, which they likely were, and were identified on the census day on October 6, 2021 as a student, they got at least a $500 deposit if they're low income. So for our foster and homeless youth, if they were identified as foster or homeless at that time, they would have gotten an additional deposit. So your students could have at least $500 in this college savings account. But what we know is that very few students are claiming these CalKids account. Only 6% of foster youth have claimed their account, and only 5% of homeless youth have claimed their account. So claiming your account just means that you're saying, yes, this is me, and I want this money eventually for my education. The funds aren't able to be used until that student is enrolled in an eligible college, which is really most colleges, including CTE programs. So once they get to college, they can actually pull that money out and apply it to their tuition and non-tuition fees. Funds do have to be used before the age of 26, but that's good time for them to be able to use that funding for school. And you can claim your account, find out information at calkids.org. So where we are asking folks for help is we would love students to be claiming their CalKids account now, so they don't have to worry about it later. So if you are interested in helping your students get connected to these CalKids accounts or claiming their CalKids account, and you're helping us kind of understand that process and what barriers or challenges or best practices exist for foster and homeless youth, we would love to have you join us. So we are gathering folks together to support foster and homeless youth in claiming these CalKids accounts. You would help us, like I say, share your experiences, share your feedback about what's working, what kind of issues you're running into as you're helping students claim these accounts. And it'd be relatively low requirements. We would just bring you all together for a group meeting a few times this year. And then of course JBay would offer you as needed technical assistance with the specific CalKids claiming process. So if you're interested, we have a jot form, and I can certainly send it out in the follow-up materials as well. But just indicate if you're interested. We'll also be including some marketing materials eventually and more information about claiming the CalKids account to be able to support you in this process. I hope you join us. This is new. It's exciting. We just got a win with some expanded eligibility for our foster kids for CalKids this past policy year. So we're really looking to get the money into young people's hands. So finally, we're moving on to resources as you're heading off into the challenge and doing and starting to think about that. Jillian's mentioned it a couple times. Thank you, Jillian. We have our big FAFSA webinar coming up on November 20th. We'll record it, put it on our website, but please join us if you can. This is where we're going to go step by step through the FAFSA. We'll go through those questions again that Jillian and I showed you, just so that you feel extra confident in helping your foster and homeless youth complete the FAFSA. I also linked to a number of resources here. I'll shout out Schoolhouse Connection has great resources for unaccompanied homeless youth. At JBay, we have resources for foster and unaccompanied homeless youth. So there's a lot of resources and training available for your team. And again, we'll send these resources out after the fact. And Jillian, I realized I just took your slide, so I will. I'm sorry. Sorry about that. I was on a roll with the resources. And then finally, a shameless plug for JBay. We have another financial aid related webinar coming up on the middle class scholarship. We'll be hearing from foster youth students about how they access that, how it was helpful to them. So I hope you're able to join us for that one as well. And finally, please don't forget to register. I know many of you have. There's separate registration forms for the foster youth and the student experiencing homelessness challenge, which are on the slide and in the chat, but please join us for the challenge. Please register so that we know that you're participating and that we can provide you support. And I know we're a little bit crunched on time, but happy to take the rest of the next 5 minutes or so just to answer any questions that you all have. And I will put our contact information up as we answer questions, so you're able to grab that before you head off. So please feel free to unmute yourself if you have any questions, and Jillian and I are here. Well, we can hang on till 2:30. So if folks have questions and want to stick around, please do. But other than that, thank you all so much for joining us and for being here and for participating in the challenge. This work isn't always easy, and I know you put your heart and soul into it, and along with your village, and we have high hopes for this year. I think it's gonna be great. Thank you all.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you,
Thank you,
Jill,
Lauren.
for having us and giving us this information. I'll definitely be in touch with you. And I'll pass on for our middle school. Since I do the seniors, we have another educational liaison that handles our middle school students. So I'll share that October 15th with her.
Thank you so much. That's great.
Take care.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.